Okay, this is rational numbers 1.5. So rational number operations. So again, just reviewing what a rational number is. Who can tell us? Jesse, nice and loud. We just talked about it. Rational number, what is that?
Fraction?
Yeah, a fraction. Basically, we're dealing with one number divided by another, or quotient. That's typically a rational number. Although we do know, and we just talked about that, whole numbers can be considered rational numbers if they're divided by 1. Okay? All right, so we're going to be talking about some number operations with rational numbers. So the first question we look at in the textbook says, what is the Celsius temperature equivalent to negative 5.5 degrees Fahrenheit? This is a common problem that we get between Canada and the States. If you're in the States, they go by Fahrenheit, we go by Celsius. So if it's negative 5.5 in Fahrenheit, we want to know what it is in Celsius. So there's this equation that we can use, which is here. Which is here, where we plug in the value of Fahrenheit. Alright, so if we do that, we plug in the value of Fahrenheit, and now we want to calculate. Let's say we want to use rational numbers and rational operations, so we're going to work this out. First of all, I want to convert the decimal to a fraction, so I change the 0.5 to 1/2, so 1/2. Then I change my mixed number to an irregular fraction. So I'm multiplying the 5 times the 2, which is 10 plus 1 gives me 11. So we have 11/2. Now I need to subtract these two numbers. I need to convert this to a fraction, so I put it over 1. And then I need to find a common denominator, so I multiply this by 2. So I get 64/2. So I'm left with negative 11/2 minus 64/2. Again, when you add or subtract fractions, you only deal with the numerator. The denominator stays the same. So negative 11 minus 64 is negative 75. Again, whether I put that negative sign in front or I put it on the numerator, either way it's interchangeable. We need to know that it can only apply to the numerator or in front or to the denominator all separately. It can't apply to both. I like to keep it always either in front or with the numerator. Never put it with the denominator. If you do see it with the denominator, which I'm going to show you over here in a minute, you're going to want to take that out of the denominator and just move it up to the numerator. You're allowed to do that because they're the same. These are actually the same. Remember, 2 over negative 3 is equal to negative 2 over 3. Those are the same thing. They're interchangeable. You want to keep the negative sign in the numerator. It just makes your calculations that much easier. All right, so now we have 5/9. Remember, when you have a number in front of a bracket, it's multiplication. It's implied. So you're just going to multiply the numerators and the denominators. So 5 times 75 is negative 375 over 18, which is 9 times 2. And now we reduce that to mixed number. We're left with negative 20/56. It's important that you guys understand how to do this. However, there is a shortcut. A very quick shortcut. Matthew?
I was wondering, when you subtracted 11/2 minus 64/2, how did you get to 75?
Okay, so negative 11, so you already have a negative number. Now you're taking away more. So you're going, if you think of a number line, right? You have 0 over here. You're at negative 11 already. Now you're taking away 64, so you're moving further in this direction. So you're actually kind of adding 64 to 11 in the negative direction. Okay? Or just use your calculator and put in negative 11 minus 64. You'll get minus 75. Okay? Which leads me to the shortcut. Now, most of you, I want you to be able to use your calculator quickly and comfortably. And as you move to more advanced mathematics, you're going to be able to do this. So, get comfortable with punching this whole equation directly into your calculator. If you can't do that right now, in 1 second, punch this in and get this answer, then you don't know how to use your calculator properly. Okay, we need to figure that out now. Because all of this, when you're in grade 11 and grade 12, you're not going to have time to do all this. You're going to have time to do this. And that's all you should have to do. Bed mass is taken care of in your calculator. It's important to note that although you can do this, you need to understand these principles, because later, with more advanced math, you'll need to do this stuff with more complicated equations. Yes, Jesse?
How do you do 5/9?
So 5/9. So in your calculator, you would type this in. 5 this button. It's your fraction button. If you don't have that button, you should get a new calculator. 9, bracket again. That's it. Oh, sorry, there's a, no, you probably don't need that multiplication sign there. The brackets will know. Okay, any questions? And it might give you this number, or it might give you the number as a fraction, like this. Okay, it might show you this, minus 20, this sign. Okay, that on your calculator is the same as that. Okay, and you should be able to convert between decimal and fraction display by pressing this number again, this button. Okay, so get familiar with that button. It's very useful, especially when we're dealing with rational numbers.
Is there a square bracket on the calculator? Or does it
No,
matter?
it doesn't matter. There's no square bracket. You gotta use just another.
I got
Yeah.
it wrong.
If you don't have this button, this is what you can do, okay? If you don't have this button to do this equation, you could have done this. 5 divided by 9 in brackets, and then bracket.
Oh,
Okay, we're on example 2. This is page 50. It says calculate -4 over 5 plus 2 and -3. 2 over -3. So the only trick with this question, guys, is they put the negative sign in the denominator. Okay, don't be afraid of that or concerned of that. You can just move it up to the numerator. Okay. The other way I could have written this is I know that plus a negative fraction is the same thing as minusing a positive fraction, right? So I could have rewritten this also like this. Right? I could have put that negative sign just in front of the fraction, just like that. Okay? It's important that you understand that this, and this are all the same. Okay? And you can test it obviously by using your calculator. So we can work this out, again, finding common denominator of 15, and then we're taking a negative number and adding it to a negative number. It's the same thing as taking a negative number and subtracting a positive number. Same thing, you're going to get a lower number, so even higher negative sign. Negative 22 over 15, and then converting to a mixed number. Right, and you could have done this directly on your calculator. You could have done it a couple ways. One would have been like this, using brackets and the division sign. You could have done this. That would have been one way on your calculator if you're not familiar with using that fraction sign. The other way is you could have done it like this. I put that -3 in brackets, but on your calculator you wouldn't have to. You just press that negative sign. Remember the difference on your calculator between a negative sign and a subtraction sign. They are different. Okay, any questions with that example?
how'd you get -2 in brackets?
Here?
Yeah.
Because I just took the negative sign, moved it up from the denominator to the numerator.
But
And
like,
whenever you have two signs next to each other, they should be separated,
oh,
right? You don't have positive, negative. It needs to be
yeah.
called out
But like,
separately.
couldn't you also put it in the middle?
Yes, like I did here.
Yeah, and then what you have to put that in bracket?
No? Just, you could have wrote it just like that.
But there's a plus sign there.
Yeah, so this plus sign goes away and is replaced by a negative, a positive number. Okay? Any other questions? All right, let's look at example 3. Okay, so here we have a classic substitution. What's the one thing I told you guys to do when you're substituting values in? Brian?
You have to leave a space for for the substitute. So
Okay.
So instead of y, you put -1 and
Right, but what did I tell you when you substitute in? I told you something in particular. Remember? Sorry?
put brackets around them.
Yes, exactly. I want to make sure that you do that, okay? So, you don't want to just put in the 5 and 1/3 here, it's not going to make sense. You have to make sure you put that bracket in. And the big part of the reason for the bracket is so that when you do have a negative sign, which we have for the y, it doesn't get lost if it's raised to an exponent. If it's raised to the exponent, you want to make sure that that negative sign is also raised to the exponent. So very important, when you substitute in, make sure you include brackets. Alright, so there's one way we could do this on our calculators. You could punch it straight in. Another way is that we're going to convert to irregular fractions and then make the multiplication and divisions. Matthew?
On a test or in our homework, are we allowed to like just punch it in a calculator and do it, or do we have to show them?
It'll tell you on the test. Okay, it could say show your work, in which case you would have to do it this way. If it doesn't and you just show the right answer, you'll typically get the full marks.
What about in the homework?
Okay? In the homework, I'd also remember you always have to start with the question and show at least a couple steps before I see the answer, otherwise I don't know if you're just copying from the back. Okay, so homework, I almost even rather show a little bit more just so I know that you're actually getting it. Okay? Alright, so we're going to convert this to irregular fraction. So I just took all the mixed numbers and converted them to irregular fractions, and now I'm going to go ahead and flip this first of all, so we're not confused by that. And when you do flip, make sure you still keep that negative sign. It still stays with the fraction. Yep.
Shouldn't it be -5/2?
Sorry. Yes. Thank you. Glad Michael's paying attention. Now when we have 3 fractions multiplied, you can just multiply right across the numerator and right across the denominator in one step. Okay? So -5 times 16 times -9. I know it's going to be a positive value because I have 2 negative signs there. Negative times a negative is positive times another positive. What is that? Kevin?
So
720?
yeah, should be.
Philippe, that's what you got? Okay, so we have 720 over 96. Converting that to a mixed number. So try this on your calculator. 720. So press that key, and then 96, and then press equals. It might give you the mixed number.
7.5.
It gives you 7.5?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Okay, so maybe you do most of the work, leave it out if it says show your work, and then you get to this point and you say, hey, you know what, I'm going to use my calculator to find the lowest terms. You can do that, right? I'm not going to know whether you actually did this by hand or if you use your calculator to get to there just by finding the lowest terms. You can obviously do that as well. Okay, any other questions with that one? All right, last example. Number 4, can I have a volunteer to read on page 52? Michael, thank you.
Example 4?
Yep.
These temperatures were recorded at noon on January 1st from 1998 to 2006 at Ottawa McDonald Cartier International Airport. Determine the average noon temperature on January 1st for the year given.
All right, so we're just looking for the average. So it tells us all of these temperatures for all the different years. So to calculate average, does anybody remember what we do to get an average, Nicholas?
You add them all up and divide by how many numbers there are?
Exactly, that's all there is to it. Okay, so we're gonna add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of those values there and divide by 9. Okay, so example 4, we're just finding the average, which is equal to the sum of values divided by the number of values. Okay, in this particular case, we would do it again, just right on your calculator. We get the average is negative 10.4 degrees Celsius. I think it worked out to negative 93.4 over 9. All right, any questions with that one? Michael?
How'd you get the 93.4?
I just added all the temperatures.
Oh,
Okay.
But you don't have to show your work in
Yeah, you could, you would.
okay.
Yeah, I'm just not gonna write it. It's right here on page 52. Okay, that's the end of the lesson.